Okay, today we're here. I had some people that actually asked about the, again, some more little tooling and about precision instruments. So let's get started with some of the other stuff. Here's one of the new ones. This is the one we've been beta testing. As you can see, it has there's a lock that actually helps it, so as it grabs onto a bearing, it spreads out in two directions. It spreads out and it spreads towards the back. So that way, when it grabs onto the bearing, it grabs on it from the entire inside. So, and also we put a little stop in it. So most bearings are usually around the 7mm, or about 6.5, 7mm. So we set those up so that way it'll just fit on, and then that way you won't have to go too far up into the casing, which can end up hurting it if you're not careful. Because if you get these in there and you just put it in there and just start expanding it, it'll grab onto the inside part of the shaft where everything's at. And here I got a couple examples of actually this is one of my other older motors, one of the ones we actually made. And making a motor is not that hard, but actually getting the stuff related for it is. The carbs we didn't make. That's about one of the few things we didn't. Some of the other things, like, of course, the screws, things like that, you can acquire, things like that. But anyway, for the most part, let me show you. So we'll be using, actually these are all going out. These are, have some more. So anyway, what you'll do is, for the most part, you'll take it and you'll insert your bearing extractor in, push it in to where it stops. You take your wrench, and again, like the other ones, you'll open it up just a little bit and kind of pull it down a little bit, so that way it sits at the edge. When you push it in, it'll sit right at the edge. So instead of being all the way in, I don't know if the camera can see that, and trying to open, it'll be just at the edge of the bearing. Okay? So once you've done that, then you'll feel it, and pull it back a little bit, and then you can start tightening it. And some of them you'll actually hear when it'll begin to, and you hold a little bit, you'll hear it when it'll pop, and when it begins to lock. Some of them won't be so aggressive, some of them will. It's very simple. Like that one, you heard kind of pop a little bit. It's grabbing entirely onto the bearing. And then you just pull it out. And as you can see, it's completely grabbed onto the bearing, so it's grabbed on this way and this way, so that way it'll hold on to the bearing. The unique thing about this one is that you don't have to get anything extra for your toolbox. You won't need any other different tooling or any other adapters or things like that for your bearings, like some of the other ones, which are all very good. They're all really, really good, except, I really hate making examples because they're all really good, don't get me wrong. The Huddy one, for example, you need different adapters for different bearings. It looks nice, it looks pretty and everything, but this one we just made to work. And as a unit, it comes just like this. It's $55, and that's it. You don't have to buy anything else. Works with various different size bearings and such, so you can get you through changing out your motors and things like that. So you can do 13, 14, 14 and a half, 15mm, if they so make them now. I don't know, we've been out of it a little while, so if they make a 15mm crank, I mean, we still do, but I mean, I don't race as competitively anymore, and we have our own track, so we do our own little things, so from time to time. But at any rate, like some of the other ones, you have to, and then there's other ones where you have to pull the front bearing out to pull out the rear bearing. This one you don't have to. As you can see, the front bearing is still in. You can also take out the front bearing without the rear bearing being in, vice versa. And let me show you with this one again, because I know a lot of you probably already seen these videos, but just in case. This is with the new bearing. So you'll take your back. Oop. Just twist, and it'll remove the rear bearing. Now, same goes true, like some of them you can't put one bearing in without the other. This one you can. It doesn't really matter. You put the front bearing in without the rear bearing. You put the rear bearing in without the front. It doesn't matter. And it's self-aligning, so you don't have to worry about that. As a matter of fact, this one's been sitting around a little while. I haven't done a whole lot to this one. Now, with all things, when you replace your bearings and things like that, you want to make sure that everything is clean. This is an old engine, so I'm really not worried about it. It's actually one of the other ones that we made, so including the casing, whole 9 yards. So I'm not really, but you know, don't do this unless you have like some other means, like you cleaned it or anything. Be a bad thing to do it at the track, but you know, like sometimes you have to. But in any case, this is one way that you have it. You can remove your bearings and move them about and everything else. So let's replace. Let's put in the front one. So the same as the true. Use your small collet and put it behind. This is aircraft aluminum, but you don't want to dig into it with the screws. So take your bearing, and then for a lot of people do know, but for those that don't, you make sure the bearings are facing towards the inside. Okay. So you'll take your rear insert, put it in, and tighten down. And again, there's a flange on the front and here, so that way it only presses on the outer race and doesn't end up like some of the other ones end up hurting the inside by pressing the inside of the bearings. I've seen a lot of that, so that's kind of a owie, or it could actually ruin the bearing. This one uses the basic technology of press, and your front bearing is in. And then because it's self-aligning, you can do the same thing with the rear. Now the rear, you want to make sure, now again, this is for those that don't know, I know a lot of people may know, these go to the outside. So when your bearings sit in there, you have to be able to look at them, okay? So keep that in mind. I know a lot of people know, but those that may not, sometimes they put the bearings in the other way, and it's so that way that the bearings can get lubrication, okay? I'll explain about that in a minute, which is one of the things about this, about engine modifications and things like that, because a lot of people ask us about our engine mods. I'll explain that in a minute. So let's put in the back bearing. Make sure you put them in towards the facing out, the bearings towards the holder, you know, outside. Put it in there. Now you want this to be facing on the flat part. So you take take the collet, put it back on, and now you just put it the opposite way. And it's self-aligning, so because everything's machined nice and straight for you. And just crank it on in. Gently, of course, you don't want to. And when it bottoms out, you don't want to keep cranking it down. That's about as far as you need to go. Just enough to where it just kind of bottoms out. And then you back it out. And you're all set. And that's it. Bearings are now in. And with the use of the new one, so it has the self-locking. And then when you're done, of course, like I've mentioned before, you only have minimum space. Like some of the other ones, they got a wrench already put into them and everything. I made this so that way it could fit your toolbox, a tool bag. So that way, the other ones, they got like multiple areas where everything's sticking out of them, and then you can't lay them flat, you know, or something, or they're a lot bigger, a lot bulkier. This one, you know, we do aerospace stuff, so that way we thought, hey, let's make it smaller, lighter, you know, something where they can still get to it, you know, kind of thing. So, and you know, I had some input from a lot of guys, a lot of the RC racers to help, like, hey, Blade, you know, how about this, or how about, it's like, hey, you know, that's a pretty good idea. sometimes, you know, we may do a lot of things, but we overlook it. And, you know, you guys help. So if you have any comments, email me, and I'd like to hear about them. It'd be really cool. Anyways.